Zendaya walked into a quaint corner cafe in downtown Los Angeles, seeking a break from the fast-paced chaos of her day. Dressed in a casual hoodie and sunglasses, she hoped to blend in, craving a moment of quiet anonymity. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as the soft hum of chatter provided a soothing background. She ordered her usual, an oat milk latte, and chose a table near the window, away from prying eyes. Just as she settled into her seat, the gentle strumming of a guitar caught her attention. Her eyes darted toward the cafe's entrance, where a young street performer was setting up, his guitar case open for tips. He couldn't have been more than 20, with a lean build and an air of nervous determination. As he began to play, his voice filled the cafe, raw, soulful, and entirely captivating. Zendaya froze, her coffee halfway to her lips. She wasn't just listening, she was mesmerized. It wasn't just his talent. Oh, it was the emotion, the story behind every note that held her attention. The young man continued his performance, his fingers dancing over the guitar strings with practiced ease. His voice carried an ache, as though each lyric came from a deeply personal place. The patrons of the cafe began to take notice, some pausing their conversations to listen. Zendaya watched intently, her instincts as a performer kicking in. She recognized something in him, a spark, a vulnerability that spoke to his untapped potential. She noticed his worn sneakers, the frayed strap of his guitar case, and the way he avoided eye contact with the growing audience. Her curiosity deepened when he finished his set and quietly packed up, gathering only a handful of bills and coins. Zendaya felt a pang of sympathy. Talent like his deserved a stage, not a sidewalk. She decided she couldn't let him disappear without learning more. Zendaya left her table and approached the young man just as he stepped outside. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow on the street, bustling with people who seemed oblivious to the quiet magic they had just witnessed. "Hey," she said, her tone casual but warm. The young man looked up, startled to see someone standing so close. His eyes widened slightly as he recognized her. "You're Zendaya, right?" She smiled, offering a hand. "And you're incredibly talented. What's your name?" He hesitated for a moment before shaking her hand. "Mason," he said softly. "I don't mean to intrude," she continued, "but your voice, it's incredible. Have you ever thought about performing somewhere bigger than a cafe?" Mason shrugged, his eyes lowering. "I've tried," he admitted. "But, it's not easy." Zendaya nodded, understanding the unspoken struggles. "Sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. Before Mason could fully process what was happening, Zendaya handed him a napkin with an address scribbled on it. "There's an open mic night tomorrow at this spot," she said. "I'll be there. You should come and perform." Mason blinked, unsure if she was serious. "You'll be there?" he asked, his tone incredulous. Zendaya laughed softly. "I'm not the one with something to prove," she replied. "You are." The next day, Mason arrived at the small but vibrant music venue, his heart pounding as he stepped inside. The walls were adorned with posters of past performers, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Zendaya was already there, seated near the stage. She waved him over, her presence a comforting anchor in the sea of his nerves. As his name was called, Mason walked onto the stage, his guitar feeling heavier than usual. The spotlight was blinding, but somewhere in the darkness he knew Zendaya was watching, her silent encouragement giving him strength. When Mason began to play, the room fell silent. His voice, raw and unpolished yet undeniably powerful, filled the space. Each lyric carried the weight of his struggles, and every chord resonated with authenticity. Zendaya watched from the audience, her heart swelling with pride. She could see the way the crowd leaned in, captivated by the emotion in Mason's performance. He wasn't just singing, he was telling his story, and the room was hanging on every word. As the final note faded, there was a brief moment of silence before the crowd erupted into applause. Mason stood there, stunned by the overwhelming response. His eyes searched the room until they landed on Zendaya, who was clapping with a broad smile. In that moment, he knew this was the beginning of something bigger. After his performance, Mason joined Zendaya at a small table in the venue's corner, still riding the adrenaline rush from his time on stage. His face was flushed, his hands trembling slightly as he cradled a glass of water. Zendaya leaned forward, her expression warm and encouraging. "That was amazing," she said, her voice carrying genuine admiration. Mason chuckled nervously, shaking his head. "I don't know if I'd call it amazing," he said, "but it felt different, like I was actually connecting with people." Zendaya smiled knowingly. "That's because you were," she replied. "People can feel authenticity. It's not just about the music, it's about the story you're telling." As the room emptied, the two continued to talk, Mason opening up about his struggles, how he had nearly given up on his dream, how the streets had been his stage because he didn't know where else to go. Zendaya listened intently, her presence a safe haven in which Mason felt understood. Before they parted, Zendaya placed a reassuring hand on his. "You have something real, Mason," she said firmly. "The world needs voices like yours, but you can't stop here. This is just the beginning." Her words stayed with him long after she left, echoing in his mind as a call to action. In the weeks that followed, Mason took Zendaya's words to heart. He began performing regularly at open mic nights, each time pushing himself to be more vulnerable, more connected. Slowly but surely, his confidence grew. Zendaya, true to her promise, showed up to support him whenever she could. Sometimes she brought friends, other times she simply sat quietly in the back, her presence a constant reminder of her belief in him. One evening, a well-known music producer happened to be in the audience. As Mason sang, pouring his soul into each lyric, the producer leaned forward, captivated by the raw emotion in his voice. After the show, the producer approached Mason, his tone professional but intrigued. "You've got something special," he said. "Let's talk about working together." Mason was stunned, struggling to believe this was actually happening. He glanced toward Zendaya, who gave him an encouraging nod from across the room. The producer's interest set off a ripple effect. Mason started collaborating with other artists, his name spreading through the local music scene like wildfire. But through it all, he never forgot how it all started, with a chance encounter and the unwavering belief of someone who saw his potential. Months later, Mason found himself standing on a massive stage, his guitar slung over his shoulder, a sea of fans cheering his name. The spotlight was blinding, but it felt warm, comforting, like the realization of a dream he hadn't dared to believe in before. As he strummed the opening chords of his set, his eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Zendaya, sitting near the front with her signature radiant smile. For a moment, he felt the overwhelming weight of gratitude. This wasn't just his victory, it was theirs. After the show, Mason found her backstage, his voice still hoarse from singing. "I don't even know how to thank you," he said, his tone filled with emotion. Zendaya shook her head, her voice gentle but firm. "You did this," she replied. "I just gave you a little nudge. The rest was all you." Zendaya's smile deepened, her pride unmistakable. "That's how we change the world," she said. And as Mason walked away, he knew that this wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of a new chapter, one where he could inspire others just as Zendaya had inspired him. And so what began as a quiet moment in a cafe became the catalyst for a young artist's journey. Zendaya's small act of encouragement reminded us all that sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones we give to others. Thank you for watching this inspiring story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible tales of Hollywood stars and their real-life impact. See you in the next video.